The door flew open, and she gasped as a stranger's hand slammed it shut behind her. "Don't scream," the man said urgently, his voice low and tight. "Please." Hello, family, and welcome to Fiction Stories TV. If you love deeply emotional stories about love, loss, and unexpected reunions, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with someone you care about. Don't forget to turn on your notifications so you never miss a new story from us. Your support truly means everything. Now, sit back, relax, and let's dive in. She had only wanted to sleep. That was all. Sleep and forget the day that had wrung her dry like a soaked rag. Her feet still ached from hours of standing at work, her shoulders sore from carrying a backpack that held more worries than books. When her landlord had handed her the spare key earlier that evening, mumbling something about faulty locks and confusion on the top floor, she had barely listened. She nodded, said thank you, and hurried away before he could complain again about rent. So when she reached the top floor, rain still dripping from her hair, heart pounding with exhaustion, she did not hesitate. The key slid in smoothly. The door opened. And everything went wrong. The apartment was dark but not empty. She had barely taken 2 steps inside when the door slammed shut behind her with force that sent fear straight through her spine. She spun around, breath caught in her throat, and there he was. Tall, broad, a silhouette carved out of shadows and tension. "Who sent you?" he demanded. I'm sorry," she stammered, backing away. "I think I made a mistake. This isn't my room." His eyes narrowed, sharp and calculating. "That's not funny." "I swear," she said quickly, panic rising. "I live here, or I thought I did. My landlord gave me this key." Outside, voices echoed down the hallway. Excited, aggressive voices. Camera shutters clicked. Someone laughed. The man cursed under his breath. "They followed me." He grabbed her wrist, not rough but firm, pulling her away from the door. "If you open that door right now, they'll destroy both our lives." She froze. "What are you talking about? Who are they?" "Paparazzi," he said, "and you just walked into the worst night of my life." Her heart hammered painfully. "Let me go." "I will," he said, softer now. "Just not yet, please." Something in his voice stopped her. Not fear, not threat, desperation. She nodded slowly. "Okay, but I'm leaving the second they're gone." He released her wrist immediately, stepping back like he did not want to frighten her further. "Fair." They stood there, strangers bound by silence, listening to chaos outside the door. The apartment smelled faintly of expensive cologne and rain. She hugged herself, suddenly aware of how small and out of place she felt in her damp sweater and worn shoes. "I really didn't mean to come here," she said quietly. "I know," he replied after a moment. "You look too tired to be lying." That made her laugh, short and shaky. "That obvious?" "Yes." She studied him now, really looked. He was handsome in a way that felt dangerous, not flashy, controlled, like someone used to being watched and judged. She wondered what kind of life produced that kind of stillness. "What's your name?" she asked. He hesitated. "Daniel." It was not his real name. She nodded. "I'm Myra." That at least was true. Minutes stretched. The noise outside slowly faded. She relaxed inch by inch, exhaustion creeping back in. She sat on the edge of the couch without asking. "Long day?" he asked. "Long life," she replied, "but today especially." He surprised her by smiling just a little. "Same." They talked, not about who he was or why cameras chased him, not about how wrong this night was. They talked about things that felt safe. School, dreams, regrets. "I study literature," she said. "People always ask what job that leads to. I don't know, I just love stories." "I envy that," he admitted. "Loving something without it loving you back." She tilted her head. "Doesn't sound like envy." "It's not," he said. "It's longing." Silence fell again, but this time it was warm. Familiar. The kind of quiet that made breathing easier. When the hallway finally went silent, she stood up. "I should go." He nodded, but his eyes followed her. "I know." She reached the door, hand trembling slightly as she unlocked it. She turned back once. "Thank you," she said, "for not making this worse." "Thank you," he replied, "for making it better." She should have left then. She did not. The night blurred into something fragile and reckless. A shared drink, a laugh that lingered too long, a look that asked a question neither of them said out loud. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. "Tell me to leave," she whispered back. Neither of them spoke. What happened between them was not planned, not careless, not meaningless. It was the kind of connection that felt like it had been waiting, soft at first, then consuming. For him, it felt like breathing after years underwater. For her, it felt like stepping into something she could never afford to lose. When morning came, reality crashed down hard. Myra woke first, heart racing. Sunlight spilled across expensive furniture that reminded her exactly where she was and where she did not belong. Panic flooded her chest. She dressed quickly, hands shaking. Shame crept in, sharp and cruel. What had she done? Slept with a stranger whose life she knew nothing about, in a world that could swallow her whole. As she grabbed her bag, the bracelet on her wrist snagged on the door handle. She tugged, breath held, but it snapped, beads scattering softly onto the floor. She cursed under her breath, scooping it up in a hurry, missing the half that slid under the couch. She did not look back. Daniel woke to silence. The bed was empty. The air felt colder. "Myra," he called, sitting up. No answer. On the floor, he noticed it. Half of a bracelet, delicate and worn. He picked it up slowly, something heavy settling in his chest. She was gone. And somehow, he already knew he would spend years searching for her. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's life moved on, or so he convinced himself. But in truth, he hadn't moved at all. Every moment was weighed down by the memory of a woman he couldn't remember fully, the feel of her touch like an unfinished sentence in his mind. The bracelet she had left behind haunted him. Every time he looked at it, the silence of her absence grew louder. It was a small thing, two halves of a forgotten trinket, but it became the only thing that mattered. A clue, a sign, a fragment of something real amidst the chaos of his life, something that made him feel something other than the cold emptiness of his wealth and fame. "Myra," he whispered to himself, but the name meant nothing. She was nothing, or at least that's what he tried to tell himself. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that she was somewhere out there, a woman he couldn't forget. He'd had women before, countless women, but none like her, none who had stayed in his mind the way she did. He hired private investigators, searched every corner of the city. She was a ghost. Nothing turned up. The key to her was as elusive as the woman herself. Meanwhile, Myra's life had taken an unexpected turn, one she never could have predicted. She had left that night with every intention of moving on, but fate had other plans. It wasn't the guilt of what she'd done that weighed her down. It was the shock of finding out she was pregnant. Her first instinct was to run, to hide from the world that seemed to be crumbling around her. But she couldn't. She had to make a decision that would define the rest of her life. At first, she thought of contacting him, the billionaire, Daniel. But what could she say? That she had his child. He had disappeared, and besides, what kind of life would it offer her son? A child born to a stranger whose life was lived under a microscope. No, she couldn't let her son grow up in the shadows of such a world. She decided to raise the child alone. She would work harder than ever, keep her head down, and make sure that he had a future far away from the chaos of the city, far away from anything that could remind her of the night her life had changed forever. But raising a child alone wasn't easy. The weight of responsibility fell hard on her small shoulders, and the dream of completing her education became more distant with each passing day. She took on extra jobs, worked late into the night, and prayed for strength when the exhaustion became too much to bear. Still, there were moments of peace. Her son, Theo, with his bright eyes and mischievous smile, was everything to her. Every day, she found new reasons to keep going. His laugh, his joy, his innocence, they made the struggle worth it. Years passed. Life in its own way moved on. Myra had found stability. She had an apartment in a quieter part of the city, one that she could afford. She had a job that paid the bills, and Theo was growing up to be a happy, healthy boy. But there was always that lingering feeling of something missing, a piece of her puzzle that would never quite fit. Then one day, an opportunity presented itself. She needed a job. The bills were stacking up again, and she couldn't keep working 2 shifts at a diner without sacrificing the time she spent with Theo. She had to find something stable. And that's when she saw the ad. It was a position for a nanny, a family looking for someone to care for a young child while the parents were away. It paid well, and it seemed like the kind of steady job she needed. When she walked into the interview, she wasn't prepared for what she found. The house was massive, an elegant mansion tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. She stood at the door, waiting for the interview to start, her heart pounding in her chest. This wasn't the kind of place she was used to. She had no business here. When the door opened, she was met with the last person she expected to see. "Hello," he said, his voice smooth but with an edge she couldn't place. "I'm Daniel." Myra froze. Daniel. The name sent a shockwave through her entire body. It couldn't be the same man. No, it had to be someone else. But when she looked into his eyes, something deep inside of her screamed, "It's him." Her heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, everything around her blurred. The air felt heavy, thick with memories she'd buried long ago. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. "Myra," he said, his eyes searching her face, trying to place her. Her world tilted. She stepped back involuntarily, bumping into a chair behind her. The shock, the recognition, the confusion, it hit her all at once. It couldn't be real. It couldn't. I don't understand," she said, trying to steady herself, but her voice betrayed her. "What are you doing here?" He looked at her carefully. I live here," he said slowly, as though trying to process the same thought she was. He had no idea who she was. He didn't remember their night together. Myra's chest tightened, her throat constricting. She had to leave. She couldn't stay here. She couldn't be this close to him after everything. But before she could move, he stepped forward. "Wait, you're the nanny." Her heart slammed against her ribcage. I don't know what's going on here, but this isn't a good idea." "Myra, wait," he said, reaching out to her. He paused, then took a step back, sensing the distance between them. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." But it was too late. She had already made up her mind. She had to leave. She had to get away before everything came crashing down. But life had other plans. She stayed, and so did he. The days that followed were a blur of awkward exchanges and tense silences. Myra couldn't shake the feeling that everything was spiraling out of her control. She had agreed to stay, despite every fiber of her being telling her to walk away. But now she was stuck in a world that didn't belong to her. And the man who had once been a stranger in her life was now right in front of her, every day. Daniel didn't remember her. He couldn't. She had changed too much since that night. Her hair was longer, her eyes more guarded. She wasn't the same girl who had stumbled into his life that rainy night. But he noticed her. There was no denying that. He would catch her watching him from across the room, his eyes lingering a moment too long on the bracelet that still hung from her wrist. He never asked about it, but Myra felt the weight of his gaze, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he couldn't quite piece together. It was maddening, and it made her heart race, knowing that her secret was teetering on the edge of discovery. She was the nanny for his niece, but it felt like a lie. She wasn't just here for the job. She was here to survive, to keep Theo's life stable, to protect him. And yet, with every passing day, Daniel became more involved with her son, more attached. He was drawn to Theo in a way that made Myra nervous. Her son's smile, his laugh, it was like a magnetic pull for Daniel. The more he interacted with Theo, the more Myra realized how close they had become. Daniel wasn't just interested in the child's well-being. There was something else, something deeper. His affection for the boy was undeniable, as if he felt a connection to him that couldn't be explained. It scared Myra, because she knew that connection. She recognized it all too well. And one day, it happened, the moment that changed everything. She was sitting in the living room, curled up on the couch with a book, when Daniel walked in. Theo was playing on the floor, his little voice filling the room with innocent chatter. Daniel stood in the doorway, his eyes fixed on the boy. Myra watched him, heart racing. She knew what was coming, but she couldn't stop it. He's really something, isn't he? Daniel said, his voice almost soft. Myra didn't trust herself to speak. She only nodded, her eyes never leaving Theo. Daniel approached, crouching down beside the boy, his large hand brushing through Theo's wild hair. The child looked up at him, beaming, before leaning into the touch. Daniel smiled, and it was a smile that made Myra's heart clench with something she couldn't define. "Yeah," Daniel muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He's just like me." Myra froze. Her breath caught in her throat, just like me. Before she could react, Daniel stood up, walking back toward the door. His expression had shifted, a hint of confusion crossing his features. "I'm sorry," he said, turning back to her. "I shouldn't have said that." But it was too late. Myra had heard it, and now she was terrified. She had been trying so hard to protect Theo from this world, to shield him from the truth, but it was slipping through her fingers like sand. That night, Myra lay awake, staring at the ceiling of the guest room. Her mind was racing, thoughts colliding. She had to face the truth. She couldn't keep running from it. Daniel was getting too close. He was beginning to suspect. And the longer she stayed, the harder it would be to hide the truth. Her son was Daniel. The realization was like a punch to her gut. For years, she had convinced herself that she could raise Theo on her own, that it would be better for him, better for her, to keep this secret buried. But Daniel was not just some stranger anymore. He was part of their lives, and the connection between them, the one he felt so strongly, could not be denied any longer. Her heart ached as she thought about everything she had sacrificed to keep Theo's father away from him. She had promised herself that she would never let him become part of that world. But now, as she listened to the sound of Daniel moving around the house, she realized how foolish she had been to think she could keep him out forever. The next morning, Daniel didn't say anything, but there was a change in the air, a shift. Myra could feel it in the way he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking, in the way he lingered in the kitchen a little too long, waiting for her to speak. She couldn't tell him. She couldn't reveal the truth. It would tear everything apart. But he didn't ask, not yet, and for that she was grateful. Days went by, and the tension between them grew. Myra tried her best to keep things professional. She kept her distance. But it was impossible to ignore the bond Daniel shared with Theo. The way he looked at him, the way he treated him, it was becoming harder to pretend that nothing had changed. And then, one afternoon, it happened. She was sitting at the kitchen table, folding laundry when she heard Daniel call out, "Myra, come here. I need to talk to you." Her heart skipped a beat. She had been expecting this. But no matter how many times she prepared herself, it never got easier. She stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans as she walked into the living room. Daniel was sitting on the couch, his face serious. "Myra, I need to ask you something," he said, his voice low. "About Theo." Her pulse quickened. She took a deep breath, bracing herself for the worst. "Is there something you're not telling me?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. For a moment, she considered lying, brushing it all away as some coincidence. But she couldn't, not anymore. She began, but her voice caught. "I need you to know something about Theo, about me." Daniel leaned forward, his expression intense. "What is it? Myra, I'm not asking to judge you, I need to know." For a long moment, Myra said nothing. The weight of the secret pressed down on her chest, but there was no turning back, no running. She had to tell him the truth. Myra took a deep breath, steeling herself. It was now or never. She had spent years running from this moment, hiding behind walls of fear and shame, but the time had come to confront the truth. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Theo and Daniel. She met his gaze, her heart hammering in her chest. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "Theo, he's your son." The words hung in the air between them like a heavy, suffocating cloud. For a moment, Daniel didn't move, didn't speak. His eyes widened, his lips parted in disbelief. "What?" he finally breathed, his voice barely audible. Myra's throat tightened, but she pushed through. I never wanted you to know. I didn't want you to have to be a part of all this. She glanced down at her hands, her fingers trembling. That night, when we met, it was a mistake, Daniel, but I couldn't walk away from it. And then I found out I was pregnant. The silence between them was deafening. Daniel's mind was racing, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. His confusion, his connection with Theo, it all made sense now. But the shock was overwhelming. The child he had grown so attached to, the child he'd felt inexplicably drawn to, was his own. But why didn't you tell me? His voice cracked, a mix of hurt and anger. Why didn't you say anything? Myra swallowed hard, guilt flooding her chest. She didn't know how to explain it, how to make him understand. I didn't know how, she said quietly. I didn't think it was fair to bring you into this life, to expose Theo to a world that isn't meant for him. You have your life, your fame, your... Is that what you think? Daniel interrupted, rising from the couch, his eyes blazing. That I wouldn't want to know my own son, that I wouldn't want to be a part of his life. Myra flinched, her chest tightening. I didn't want to disrupt your world, she whispered. I didn't want you to feel obligated. Obligated? His voice softened, but the pain in it was undeniable. Myra, I never knew that Theo was mine. I never knew. I could have been there, I could have. I didn't want to drag you into it, Myra said, her voice breaking. I couldn't let you be a part of a life that was never meant for you. Daniel took a step toward her, his face softening as he saw the tears in her eyes. Myra, he said, his voice low, full of raw emotion. You should have told me. You should have trusted me. I couldn't, she whispered. I was afraid of losing everything, afraid of what you might think of me, afraid of how the world would see me, how they'd see us. The air between them grew thick with emotion, the weight of their unspoken words crashing down. Daniel's eyes softened, his anger fatting into something deeper, something vulnerable. I'm not the person I was before. I wasn't back then, and I'm not now. I don't want you to be afraid anymore, not from me. Myra looked up at him, her breath shaky. She had never imagined this conversation going like this. She had expected anger, resentment. But what she saw in his eyes was something different, something warm and understanding. He wasn't the man she had feared he might be. You don't know what it's like, she said, shaking her head. To raise a child on your own, to do everything for them without anyone else to lean on. I couldn't ask you for help. I couldn't ask you to change your life for us. Daniel's expression softened, and he reached out, gently lifting her chin so that their eyes met. I know what it's like to feel alone, he said quietly. But you don't have to do this alone anymore. We're in this together now. Myra's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't pull away. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope, to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could be different, that maybe Daniel wasn't a stranger after all. Tears welled in her eyes as she met his gaze. You mean that? Daniel nodded, his eyes unwavering. I do. I'm not walking away from this, not from you, not from him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of their words hung in the air, but for the first time in years, Myra felt a flicker of hope. Theo's laughter echoed from the next room, and Myra couldn't help but smile through her tears. Theo, he doesn't know, does he? She asked, her voice trembling. No, Daniel replied. Not yet, but we'll tell him together. Myra's chest tightened with emotion, and she wiped away the tears that had begun to fall. I don't know if I'm ready for this, she whispered, her voice soft. I don't know if I'm ready to let you in. Daniel smiled, a gentle, understanding smile. You don't have to be ready, not yet. We'll take it one step at a time. And for the first time in a long while, Myra felt something she hadn't felt in years. A sense of peace, a sense of possibility. Days turned into weeks, and Myra's life slowly began to change. Daniel kept his promise. He didn't force anything. He didn't rush anything. He took the time to get to know Theo, to become part of his life in a way that felt natural, not forced. And through it all, Myra watched, amazed at how easily Daniel slipped into the role of a father. He was everything she had hoped for Theo, caring, present, patient. She began to trust him again, to let him in. And with every passing day, it became clearer to her that they were building something new, something strong. And then, one evening, after a quiet dinner together, Daniel turned to her, his eyes full of warmth. "Myra," he said softly, "I don't want to live without you, without both of you. Will you? Will you marry me?" Myra's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this, hadn't prepared for it. But in that moment, as she looked into Daniel's eyes, she knew. She knew that this was the beginning of something beautiful. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Daniel, I'll marry you." And as he took her hand, she realized that love had found its way into her life, just when she had least expected it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional tales. Share this video with someone you love, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to stay updated with all of our new content. Your support means everything to us. Stay tuned for more stories that will touch your heart.